I've seen men lose everything, not to heart attacks, not to cancer, but to a slow, silent erosion of their masculinity. And it started in a place no one ever talks about, behind closed doors, in private moments they thought were harmless. What they dismissed as routine self-pleasure ended up costing them their strength, their confidence, even their relationships. Not overnight, but slowly, silently, until it was too late. I'm Dr. Mohit Kara, a board-certified urologist and professor with over 3 decades helping men protect their sexual health, vitality, and dignity, especially as they age. I've worked with thousands of men in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. And the truth is, most of them had no idea that the way they were masturbating was damaging their bodies and their futures. Because here's the paradox. Masturbation can be healthy when done right, but after 60, what once worked for you in your 20s can actually backfire. The habits you never questioned can quietly undermine your circulation, hormones, pelvic floor, and energy. In this video, I'm going to reveal the 5 masturbation mistakes that older men often ignore, and the real consequences they pay for them. If you want to maintain your performance, protect your manhood, and age with confidence, this may be the most important message you hear all year. And mistake number 3, it's destroying the pelvic health of older men across the country. And almost no one is talking about it. Before we get started, if you're serious about protecting your health and manhood as you age, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss another science-backed tip designed specifically for men over 60. And if this topic speaks to you, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0. Your feedback helps me make these videos better for you. Now let's begin with the first mistake, one that quietly strips away your sensitivity, dulls your arousal over time, and leaves many older men wondering why they no longer feel the way they used to. It's a habit that starts small, often unnoticed, but its impact on your brain and performance is far more serious than most realize. Let's talk about the hidden cost of relying on pornography. Mistake 1. Using porn as a crutch, not for pleasure, but for escape. I can still remember the look on his face. A mix of guilt and confusion. He was 68, retired early, and had lost his wife to cancer just 3 years earlier. He told me he didn't watch pornography for excitement anymore. He watched it because he didn't know what else to do with the silence in his home. "It just fills the time," he said, "helps me not feel so alone." This is something I hear more often than most would expect. Older men turning to pornography, not for pleasure, but for emotional escape. To soothe boredom, grief, stress, or even a sense of fading identity. And on the surface, it seems harmless, but what many of them don't realize is how damaging this habit becomes over time. When you rely on porn as a daily escape, your brain adapts. Dopamine, the chemical tied to motivation and pleasure, stops responding the way it used to. It takes more and more stimulation to feel less and less. Slowly, the brain becomes numb to natural arousal. What once triggered desire now feels flat. Real intimacy becomes harder to enjoy. Erections aren't as firm, and that spark, that deep, vital spark that makes you feel like a man, starts to fade. I've seen men in their 70s who thought they were just too old for intimacy, when in reality, they were suffering from something I call desensitization burnout, a condition caused not by aging, but by years of overstimulation without connection. It doesn't show up overnight, it creeps in, and by the time they realize something's wrong, the emotional and physical distance between themselves and their partners, or even their own bodies, feels like a canyon. One patient told me it felt like a light had gone out inside him. "I didn't even notice it dimming," he said, "until one day it just wasn't there anymore." That's the price older men pay when they ignore this mistake. It's not just about erections or arousal, it's about identity, about feeling present and connected to your body, your mind, and the moment. It's about keeping that flame alive, not for someone else, but for yourself. The good news is, with awareness and small changes, this can be reversed, but only if it's recognized early. And what's even more surprising, Some men aren't damaging their minds, they're unknowingly harming their bodies. There's one habit almost every older man repeats during self-pleasure that directly weakens blood flow and performance. And no one is warning them about it. Let's talk about it next. If you're still here and this message is resonating with you, type the number 1 in the comments to let me know you're still with me and that this matters to you. Now, let's move on to the second mistake that too many men overlook and often pay the price for. Mistake 2. Ignoring blood flow, the silent circulation killer. I once had a patient named Richard. Charles, 73 years old, proud military vet, a man who'd spent his whole life taking care of everyone else. He came into my office convinced he had erectile dysfunction because of old age. Said it like it was a sentence he just had to accept. But as I asked more questions and ran a few simple tests, I realized it had nothing to do with age. The real issue? His circulation had quietly declined for years, and no one had told him the truth. What many older men don't understand is that your penis isn't just about performance. It's one of the earliest indicators of your cardiovascular health. It needs blood, strong, steady, oxygen-rich blood, to function. But if that flow is blocked, restricted, or weakened, the effects show up down there first. The body is smart like that. It sends warning signs early, if you know how to listen. Unfortunately, most men over 60 don't. They continue their usual habits. Quick, aggressive masturbation, done in silence, often without preparation or care. No warm-up, no breathing, no circulation-boosting technique, just friction. And what they don't realize is that this repeated mechanical motion over time can actually compress vessels, reduce tissue oxygenation, and slowly damage the very structures they rely on for intimacy. I asked Richard how he usually pleasured himself. He said, "Fast, just to get it over with." That phrase stuck with me, just to get it over with. No awareness, no intention, no understanding of what his body needed at this stage of life. That's where the damage starts. Blood vessels stiffen, nitric oxide production falls. Micro tears in the tissue reduce responsiveness. It's not always painful, but it's progressive. And the longer it goes ignored, the harder it is to reverse. The price older men pay for overlooking blood flow is not just physical. It's deeply emotional. It shows up in the quiet moments, the hesitation before intimacy, the way they avoid mirrors, the growing feeling of disconnection from their own masculinity. They don't talk about it, but they feel it. I've seen it too many times not to. But here's the good news. Improving blood flow is possible, even in your 70s or 80s. It starts with awareness, gentler technique, deep breathing, and a shift in mindset. You don't need to move fast, you need to move smart. And yet, even men who get their circulation right often make another critical mistake. It's not what they're doing, it's what they're not activating. There's a hidden muscle group responsible for stamina, firmness, and control. And most older men are unknowingly letting it waste away. Let me explain. Mistake 3. Skipping pelvic floor engagement. The forgotten muscle group. Most men don't know the name of it. They've never trained it. They can't see it in the mirror, and they've never been told it's essential to their manhood. But the truth is, your pelvic floor is the foundation of your sexual function. And for older men, neglecting it is like trying to build a house on sand. I remember one man in particular. His name was Walter, 66, a former truck driver with a deep voice and firm handshake. He looked strong. You wouldn't guess that he was struggling with what he called weak finishes, an unpredictable urgency when using the bathroom. At first, he thought it was just age catching up with him. But the real issue? His pelvic floor muscles had lost tone and control from years of passive habits and unconscious self-pleasure. It's not something we're taught. Most of us grow up believing sex is all about what's on the outside, the visible parts. But the truth is, the muscles deep inside your pelvis are what control your erection strength, ejaculation timing, and even bladder support. And they don't train themselves. If you don't engage them, they shrink. If you don't use them intentionally, they forget how to respond. Older men often masturbate in slouched positions, lying down, watching a screen, barely aware of their posture or engagement. Over time, this creates pelvic floor atrophy. The muscle weakens, your control slips, the snap, the strength, the surge of confidence you used to feel, it fades, slowly, quietly, and very often, permanently, unless you take action. When I showed Walter how to do a basic pelvic floor contraction, what some call a Kegel, he looked at me like I was crazy. "You're telling me this little move could fix all that?" I said. "Try it for 2 weeks and see." He did, and when he came back, his eyes told me everything. "Doc," he said, "I feel like I've got my engine back." That's the part so many older men miss. They don't realize they've given up control of the very muscles that define their performance and identity. They accept the loss as inevitable, but it isn't. With just 5 minutes a day, you can rebuild strength and stamina from the inside out. But building control is only part of the story, because the next mistake isn't about physical strength at all. It's about frequency. And the invisible energy cost most men never notice until it's already drained them dry. Let's talk about that next. If you're still watching and finding these insights valuable, drop a number 1 in the comments to let me know you're here and engaged. Now, let's keep going. It's time to uncover the 4th mistake that quietly drains more than most men ever realize. Mistake 4, not tracking frequency, the energy drain they never see coming. There's something I often ask my older male patients that catches them off guard. How do you feel after you finish? Not during, not before, but after. The room gets quiet. Some think for a moment and say, "Fine, I guess." But then there are men, the honest ones, who say something that always hits me hard. They say, "Tired, empty, like I gave something away." That's more than just a feeling. It's a warning sign. As we age, our bodies change. Testosterone production slows. Recovery time stretches longer. Nutrient reserves, like zinc and dopamine, aren't as abundant, but many men don't adjust. They keep the same habits they had in their 30s, even into their 60s and 70s. Daily or near-daily masturbation becomes routine, not for pleasure, not even for relief, but out of habit. And they never stop to ask, "Is this still serving me?" I remember a man named Gerald, 72, healthy, active, sharp as a tack, but he told me he had started feeling constantly drained. "It's like I'm never fully charged anymore," he said. He assumed it was aging, but when I asked about his sexual habits, he admitted he masturbated every morning, as he had for decades. I had to gently tell him, what worked for you at 35 might be silently burning you out at 72. That was the key. It's not about guilt or restriction, it's about awareness. Older men need to understand that ejaculation takes energy, physical, hormonal, neurological energy. And if you're not recovering properly or doing it too often, you may slowly erode the very strength you're trying to preserve. You might not notice it at first, but over time, the price becomes clear. Less motivation, lower mood, less drive, and a growing sense of emotional flatness. The solution isn't to stop, it's to start tracking. Pay attention to how you feel after. Notice patterns. Experiment with spacing things out. 2, maybe 3 times per week. Give your body time to replenish what's been used. You might be surprised how much clearer, stronger, and more grounded you feel. Unfortunately, most men never connect the dots. They chase the moment but ignore the cost, and that cost adds up. But even when men get their frequency right, there's still one final mistake that ruins everything. One that's not about technique or timing, but about the very way they approach self-pleasure. It's the most overlooked yet most powerful shift a man can make, and we'll cover that next. Mistake 5. Treating it like a habit, not a ritual. I once asked a patient in his late 70s what his usual routine was when it came to self-pleasure. He gave a slight chuckle and said, "Routine? I don't think about it much. It's just something I do, like brushing my teeth." That one sentence captured exactly what so many older men do without realizing the quiet cost. What starts as a moment of release slowly becomes a mindless habit. No intention, no connection, no meaning, just another box to check before bed. But your body, especially as it ages, craves presence. And when you treat self-pleasure like a mechanical task, your body begins to respond in kind. Less sensation, less energy, less satisfaction, and perhaps most damaging of all, less intimacy with yourself. It may sound strange, but as a doctor who's worked with men for over 3 decades, I've come to believe this deeply. The way you treat your body in private reflects how you carry yourself in the world. Older men who ignore this shift often pay a subtle but heavy price. Over time, the excitement fades. Erections become weaker. Orgasms feel shorter, flatter, and less fulfilling. They blame aging or stress or medications. When the real issue is that their minds and bodies are no longer aligned, they've forgotten that pleasure can be healing, not just fleeting. I think about Henry, 75, who came to me after struggling with what he called a disconnect. He said, "Doc, I just don't feel in it anymore. I finish, but it's like I'm watching it happen, not experiencing it." When I asked him to try one thing, to slow down, remove distractions, and treat it like a ritual instead of a reflex, something changed. He came back 3 weeks later with a quiet smile and said, "It felt different, like I remembered something I hadn't felt in years." That's the power of intention. When you approach self-pleasure with presence, when it becomes a ritual, your brain responds differently. Your nervous system calms, your circulation improves, your sense of connection deepens, and with it comes a confidence, a spark, that so many men fear they've lost for good. But now that you've seen these 5 critical mistakes, and the real price older men pay for ignoring them, the question becomes, what next? In the final part of this video, I'll show you how to take everything you've learned and turn it into a simple, powerful practice that supports your health, your masculinity, and your future. Conclusion: the price you pay, and the power to reclaim it. I've spent over 30 years sitting across from men in their 60s, 70s, even their 80s. Strong men, wise men, men who have lived full lives and built families, careers, and legacies. And yet, in the privacy of my office, many of them confess the same quiet fear. I don't feel like myself anymore. Not because of illness, not because of loss, but because of something deeper. A slow erosion of vitality that they can't quite explain. And time after time, when we dig into their habits, it becomes clear. These 5 mistakes around self-pleasure, seemingly harmless, often unnoticed, are taking more than they give. Using pornography as emotional escape, neglecting blood flow, ignoring the pelvic floor, overdoing frequency, and treating the entire act like a lifeless routine. Each one chips away at physical strength, emotional connection, and that rooted sense of manhood. It's easy to shrug these off, to say, it's just what I've always done. But what worked when you were 25 can quietly harm you at 65. That's not weakness, that's biology. And it doesn't mean you've failed. It means your body is asking for something different, something wiser. I remember one patient, a quiet man in his early 70s, who told me he thought his best days were behind him. He believed the loss of energy, the flattening of pleasure, and the emotional distance he felt were just part of aging. But after making small changes, softening his approach, becoming more intentional, reconnecting with his body, he came back weeks later and said, "I feel like I've woken up again." That's what I want for you. This isn't about shame or restriction, it's about restoration, about reclaiming something that never truly left. It was simply buried under years of unconscious habits. And the moment you begin to treat self-pleasure as a form of self-care, not just release, the benefits ripple through every part of your life. So take what you've learned here today and begin gently. Experiment, observe, adjust. There's no perfect formula, but there is a better way, one rooted in awareness, health, and dignity. Because your age doesn't define your masculinity, how you treat yourself does, and it's never too late to choose differently. If this message resonated with you, stay with me, because in the next video, I'll walk you step by step through a healthy, mindful self-pleasure practice built specifically for men over 60, one that supports your circulation, your hormones, and your inner fire, the part of you that deserves to stay strong for years to come.